Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's program featuring Mary Forgione. We're just honored that she's going to speak to us today about camping and hiking and camping that really go together. Sometimes you can't do one without the other. So we have a lot of people that have signed up today, and you're probably all campers and hikers, and you're going to get lots of wonderful tips on places of where to go. So we'll start just like about 3 or 4 minutes after 5 o'clock. So I will be repeating myself, but today's program will be recorded. And thank you very much, Mary, for letting us do that. We're going to be putting it on YouTube, Pasadena Library. Also, it's closed caption. If you would like to, you need to select that feature on your device. And so for optimal viewing enjoyment, if you could please mute yourself. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to start in about 2 minutes, but I just want to remind everyone to please mute yourself. And today's program will be recorded for YouTube for Pasadena Library. Thank you very much, Mary, for letting us do that. We're absolutely honored to be able to welcome Mary Forgione to speak today about camping and hiking and camping. When I first contacted Mary, we talked about the fact that she goes to Mount Whitney, hikes up there every year, and she was just also getting ready to take off on a back camping trip in Santa Catalina Island for 4 days. So she's an absolute pro about camping and hiking and camping and hiking and camping. So if you want to, you can select closed caption on your device if that will provide you with a better listening opportunity. So I want to tell you a little bit about the library. I'm sure you all know the devastating news about Pasadena Public Library, that we had to close Central Library due to seismic retrofit requirements because of the unreinforced masonry walls at Pasadena Central Library. We have 9 other branches in addition to Central Library, and 7 of them are open right now with extended hours, and the other 2 will be opening shortly for extended hours as well. And we're looking at several solutions to try to keep serving our Pasadena community as excellently as we have done in the past. So I want to remind you about our wonderful One City, One Story program. Some of you found out about the program today going to Mary's The Wild, her site, and also some of you signed up through Off the Shelf. So Pasadena Public Library presents a summer One City, One Story, where we encourage everyone to read the same book. And this is the book this year, Leave Only Footprints, My Acadia to Zion Journey Through Every National Park by Connor Knighton. If you sign up for the Pasadena Public Library Adult Reading Program, while the supplies last, and first come, first serve, you can get a free copy of this absolutely wonderful book. But Connor Knighton will be speaking on the library Zoom on Thursday, June the 24th at 5 o'clock. And I encourage you all to sign up for that. If all of the copies of the books are given away, we have some in our catalog that you can check out. And also the book is available at Vroman's Bookstore in Pasadena, and I'm sure at other bookstores as well. So I do hope you sign up for One City, One Story on Thursday, June the 24th. So I want to tell you a little bit about Mary. You probably saw, those of you that get the Los Angeles Times, and here's a big publicity for the Los Angeles Times, but on Sunday, March the 14th, this is a hiking section, and Mary will actually be giving you the link to it that you can download all of this. It is absolutely wonderful information in it, and it has her section about the wild on the very back that she will be talking about. So let me tell you a little bit about Mary Forgione. She shares hiking and camping trips and tips and what to take, where to go, and a myriad of other helpful details. She covers outdoors and travel for the Los Angeles Times. She's also the editor of The Wild, a newsletter launched in 2020 that covers essential outdoor content for Southern Californians. She loves running, hiking, camping, and backpacking, and doing anything outdoors, always looking for new ways to experience destinations in California and beyond. She's a trained volunteer for the Sierra Club outings. She's one of their leaders who leads free hikes open to all, and I'm sure she'll tell you about those. She hikes to the top of Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the contiguous US, every year. So it is great pleasure, the Pasadena Public Library, to introduce you to Mary Forgione. Thank you so much for agreeing to present this program today. And again, she's presenting another program on July 14th as well. And so Mary, welcome.
Christine, thank you so much. And thank you to the Pasadena Public Library. This is a great opportunity. So yeah, let's talk about hiking. I kind of wish we were all together in a nice air-conditioned auditorium so we could see each other and talk and ask questions, but I'll just start off by talking. I do want to talk about the LA Times hiking issue. It's really easy to find online. It's latimes.com/hiking. And you will see all of the stories that went into that. And one of the components of it was we had the audacity to write the 50 best hikes in Southern California. And of course, this was extremely subjective. And when we talked about this issue, it came out in mid-March. It was kind of a, oh my goodness, are people going to make fun of us? Like, oh, wow, LA discovers its own backyard. But I think that's really one of the things that I feel so strongly about, is that Southern California is such a fantastic outdoors destination. And I don't think people think about it that way, certainly not visitors. And what always seems to astound me is even locals don't seem to know what a great outdoors destination it is. One of the other things we did, aside from this 24-page issue, is we launched this newsletter called The Wild that is just dedicated to all kinds of outdoors news. Surfing, cycling, running, hiking. Of course, because I am a hiker and a backpacker, I focus a lot on that. But this too really became timely. We did not know the pandemic was coming. We launched during the pandemic. And one of the things that I think the pandemic showed all of us, Southern Californians, is just how treasured and valued our open spaces are. More people than ever, because we were locked down and you couldn't go to a lot of places, more people than ever were hiking and camping. And I think that's a trend that's continuing into this summer and will probably continue for a good long time. What I love about events like this is there is a huge community of hikers, campers, and backpackers that you really never see, we're not out in the street every year doing the LA Marathon. We don't congregate all in one place for any particular event. However, it is such a wide-ranging community. And, I really feel like people can find their tribe within this community, whether you like car camping or you like backpacking or you like running or you like trail running or you like peak bagging, whatever it is. So kind of one of my jobs today is to kind of get you guys interested in this and inspired enough to try it. Those of you who are veterans, we can chat about some more advanced stuff. So I thought the way I would start is just to talk about what I've been doing and what what my summer's looking like, just to be boring, because that's the only person I know who is, I can share with you what I'm doing. I just got back from, I don't know if many of you know about the Pacific Crest Trail. It runs from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, covers about 2,700 miles. Yes, you can go and do it all in one go, but some of us do it in pieces. I recently had a wonderful experience up by McBurney Falls State Park, which is up north of Redding, up in Northern California, where I did 4 days on a segment of the Pacific Crest Trail. And this segment was just dreamy. It wasn't particularly high elevation. I was there in mid-May, but every morning when we got up, at one end, we could see snow-covered Shasta. In another direction, we could see snow-covered Lassen. And every day we saw both or at least one of those peaks. And it was just really kind of magical. They were long days. These were segments where we were hiking 12 to 14 miles each day to cover some terrain. The terrain was pretty flat, pretty even, so it wasn't so hard. But it was just one of those lovely, this is where the Pacific Crest Trail has now come out of the Sierra, and we were mostly at the beginning of the Cascade portion. And as you go north on the PCT, then you get into the Oregon border and you continue on through there. So that's one thing I did. I also, in mid-April, I find California not just a fabulous outdoor destination, but also just, it never ceases to surprise me. I've been hiking for decades out here. I went and did the Trans-Catalina Trail. I don't know how many of you know about that. It is, of course, on Catalina Island. And this is a trail that was put together and quote unquote officially opened about 6 years ago. Certainly you could hike certain areas of Catalina, but this allowed what they call a through hike, where you start in one point and you start at Avalon and you walk all the way across the island. Magically, they have, the trail is 38 miles long, even though the island is only 22 miles long. So what they have you do at some point, you kind of curve around and you don't retrace your steps, you do a slightly different route. It was absolutely beautiful. I was very lucky. Catalina can be very hot. It was overcast while I was there. And we were very lucky to have, just really good hiking weather. Took off again mid-April. And this is an area that the wild, right, the wild side of Catalina, it's still highly regulated by the Conservancy, the Catalina Island Conservancy, which oversees about 80% of the land. It is just stunning. If you have never seen some of the coves and some of the peaks on Catalina, I will tell you though, it is one of those trails that is straight up and straight down. So I don't think there is a flat section of that trail. So that really is pretty challenging. Even the downhills become tough because they are so steep. And I would recommend anybody considering doing that trail, definitely, they have an awesome, the Catalina Island Conservancy, they have a profile of the trail, and you should definitely look at that carefully. Our first night, we had bison in camp. We woke up in the morning to hear grunts, and there was indeed bison in camp, because a couple hundred of them, or maybe 150, roam around that part of the island. And of course, you have to steer clear of them. Once you leave, the first campsite is inland, the others are all on the coast. And there is this dreamy campground. It is the farthest most point, or one of the farthest, called Parsons Landing. Boaters probably know about it. It just has 6 little campsites right on the beach, and it is absolutely stunning. And you can feel like you're at the end of the world. It is just fantastic. The group I was with, we also did a day hike out to Starlight Beach, which is even more remote, and that added kind of 9 miles, but totally worthwhile destination. So Catalina, to me, was a real surprise. You get up steeply, you oversee the peaks, the islands, what it all looks like, and then you come down steeply, and then you're at ocean level. So I highly recommend, whether you do it in segments, whether you do it all at once, it's fabulous hiking. And then in August, I will be going to Mount Whitney. I like to tell people I do Mount Whitney every year, whether I need to or not. It has been kind of an obsession, I suppose, since 1994. Last year was very difficult. It was open for a very short amount of time. It was closed. They closed the main trail because of COVID. They reopened it right around the 4th of July, around that time, and then had to close it about a month later because of the fires in the area. So I was lucky enough to get there last year. Mount Whitney is tricky. You need to get a permit lottery style, and that lottery starts in February. So you have to be pretty well planned out in terms of seeking permits. You will get permits either for a day use, which means you're doing 22 miles in one day with a lot of gain and you're at elevation. I have done it that way. Or you will get overnight permit and you can stay. There's a couple of camps on the flank of the mountain. I find Mount Whitney thrilling. Each time I do it, it's like 14,595, 14,602. It kind of varies a little bit. It's just, you stand on top of Mount Whitney and you look into the heart of the Sierra. And I can't think of too many other places. There are places in Yosemite where you just see it all. And to me, given that it's only about 4 hours north of us, I think this is a quest that like every Californian should do, but that's just me. So that's kind of how my summer's shaping up. I think there is fabulous hiking in Southern California. Christine and I were chatting about, how we get started and, what kind of hikes are just locally in Southern California. I'm going to focus on ones that are in the Pasadena area that for those who hike in that area will know them. Echo Mountain, which has a history as an old resort town. It's right up there above Altadena. Very easy to get to the Lake Ave trailhead. I would take the Mount Wilson Trail as far as Orchard Camp, which is, you can go all the way to the top of Mount Wilson. That's a very difficult hike, and it's about 14 miles round trip. However, going up to Orchard Camp gives you the feel of the woods. And it's about, I think I want to say 6 miles round trip. Henniger Flat, I was just there on Saturday, which is a very hot, kind of had the sun, the heat was starting. I started at the Pinecrest Trailhead, also in Altadena. You go up this big fire road and you think, wow, this is so ugly. I can't stand it. And it's so hot. Why am I doing this? And you get to the top of this wonderful experimental forest, which is shady. And you just want to stay there forever and never go back down to LA. And I would also talk about Switzer Falls, which is also very close. It's one of the closest trailheads as you start up Highway 2, Angeles Crest Highway. So I mentioned those 4 hikes. I think they're between, I want to say 5 miles round trip. And maybe that's a lot for some newbies, but they are hikes that will introduce you to the forest, that will you will get introduced to what is pacing about. What do I need to carry on my back? You'll quickly realize, I mean, I think everybody knows that you have to take water, and on days like this, you have to take lots of it. If you've gone, and people always say, how do I know how far I should go? If you've gone through half your water, turn around, because it's not going to get, and unless you're going to a destination that has potable water, it's not going to get any better. So these are hikes that if you're feeling fit and you're feeling like you want to explore, that's where I would start. You can also start, I call them conditioning hikes. There are wonderful places, local parks. Griffith Park is fantastic. I consider Griffith Park my outdoors gym. It's how I started in hiking. Just take a hike to the Hollywood sign, take a hike to Mount Hollywood, starting not at the observatory, which can be difficult for parking purposes and crowds, but starting in what's called the merry-go-round parking lot. You'll find it on Google Maps. And it just has a wonderful network of trails. I also really want to urge people to think about, you don't have to go alone. So certainly, you know, when we start out on a pretty easy hike, right? Maybe you're doing a 1 or 2 mile trail just to see how boots fit or whatever. Maybe you're going with your neighbor, you're going with a friend, or you're going with your mate, whomever, family member. But I really am a big believer in groups, because you not only won't get lost, but you also will start learning what those leaders and those other hikers can teach you about what should be in your pack, about how to trail find, how to navigate. And those are really, really good skills, because those are skills you are going to need to have, particularly if you progress with hiking and decide, oh, I want to do a 5-day trip, or I want to do a 3-day backpack, or whatever. We all see stories in the paper about people getting lost, people getting hurt. I was just amazed this past winter at the number of people who were being rescued in an area of the Angeles National Forest that was off limits because of the burn area. So I'm just one of those people. I respect all closures. If the Forest Service is telling me it's not safe to come in, this is a fragile area for wildlife, or there are trees down, or whatever the reason is, I'm just not going in there. So, and sometimes it isn't always easy to know what trails are closed. If you go to Google Angeles National Forest, they have maps and they have trail descriptions of what's open and what's closed. I'm going to go back to groups. Go with a group. There, you can go to Meetup. Meetup has very different all kinds of groups put their hikes on Meetup. So for example, I have led for Sierra Club. I am a volunteer leader with them. You will see Sierra Club trips on Meetup. You'll see all kinds of group trips on Meetup. And you can contact the leader, ask a lot of questions about the trail. Is this a good trail for me? This is how experienced I am, stuff like that. Boys and Girl Scouts, that's a good way to get kids out. Also, they often need adult leaders. I have raised my hand, and I don't have children, and helped out with some of their trips. Church groups, school groups. There are a number of new-ish hiking groups for women, for people of color. Hikler is one of them. You'll find them online. And so there's just like all kinds of variety. But I think one of the things I really want to impart is, okay, we all know it's not necessarily safe to hike alone, but when you are going with somebody, if you say, oh, well, I'm just going to go with this person, just remember that person, if anything happens, is your rescuer. And you, in turn, are the rescuer of that person. So, I don't know what everybody's skill levels are in terms of first aid and things like that when you go with a group, particularly groups that have trained leaders. And I mentioned Sierra Club, Angeles chapter, Sierra Club, you can Google that. They have a schedule of activities. The hikes are free. They are open to all. And I'm happy to report they will be resuming on July 5. So Sierra Club has not been taking official hikes and leading official hikes, but my understanding is they are going to return on July 5. The other thing I would do is guidebooks. I know that sounds kind of old fashioned because we all love apps, but before I go to apps, I'm going to talk about, I just love various websites. I love Modern Hiker. Casey Schreiner has done a great job of making us all feel connected and welcome in the wild. He has a book out about Griffith Park, and he has a day hiking guide to LA. Both are really good. And what I like about that, I also like the book 100 Trails of the Angeles. That's kind of what I trained on. What I like about these guidebooks is they tell you more about the trail. They give you some history. They'll also tell you, you know, oh, this part is over. They will give you details about the trail. Now, I'll talk about trail apps, which are awesome. I use Gaia. I use All Trails. There are free versions of these, and they are particularly good in identifying trails like, oh, hey, I'm in Pasadena. I just want to do a 5-mile trail. You plug that in and it will show you the trail. It won't necessarily tell you about trail conditions, right? So what I advise people to do is often, particularly All Trails, I think Gaia as well, there are comments like, oh, I just went on this and, you know, half of it's closed, or I just went on this and it's awesome, or I just went on this and the lake doesn't exist anymore, or the waterfall's not running. So it is a way to have kind of real-time information about where you might be going hiking. So I like the apps. As you become a more seasoned hiker, you really need to also carry a paper map, because if something happens to your phone and you cannot navigate with it, you're kind of dead in the water unless you know exactly where you're going and you've been on that trail before. So having map skills, map and compass skills is always a really good thing. So now I'll just talk broadly about, you know, Southern California and what it has to offer. Maybe you already know, you know, we are surrounded by fabulous hiking destinations. Santa Monica Mountains. Okay, this you want to do in cooler months. You want to do, I love hiking out there in winter, spring, late fall. Summer can be brutal on some of the sites. And we have this wonderful through trail called the Backbone Trail. It's 67 miles long, and people tend to do it in either out and back hikes or point-to-point hikes. If you go to the latimes.com/hiking guide, you'll see that we broke it into 8 pieces. There are other ways to carve up. I think the National Park Service also has a website on the Backbone Trail. It's absolutely beautiful. You will see the kind of chaparral, coastal chaparral. You'll see all of the wildlife. It's really, really beautiful. And on many, many segments, you get these fantastic ocean views. Now, you also see those zillion-dollar Malibu homes. And it's a reminder that LA is just not one thing. Oh, we have a through trail. It must be wild and remote. Well, not really. You go past a lot of homes. You come to some very beautiful, quiet places. You might pass a waterfall, and then you're out on a road and you see a huge, a huge communication tower. So we're never all one thing. LA is also surrounded by national forests, which I kind of love. I think the Angeles National Forest is my favorite. It's close. It's where I go to start just about any hike. One of my favorite conditioning hikes is Mount Baldy, which at 10,500 feet is just a great workout. Great views, all of the above. I was so thankful during the pandemic that many trails remained open, because some city trails closed. Then because of the fires, the forests closed. That was a whole different thing. But during the pandemic, I don't know about everybody on this meeting, but I certainly found solace in just going. I remember I would do this one, it's called Mount Pacifico, which is what we would call in the Front Range of the Angeles National Forest. I would hike on that and maybe see 2 other people. And I just felt like I had taken a break from the pandemic, that I didn't have to worry about my mask and my proximity to people, even though on the trail, we were all keeping our distance. So we got the national forest, we got the Santa Monica Mountains, and then we have these wonderful deserts to our east, which we wouldn't go now, but in winter are just fantastic. When we did the 50 best hikes, Matt Pollock, I'll give a shout out to him. He writes for Weekend Sherpa. He also, I think, is the newly minted editor of A Foot in a Field. It's a guide to San Diego, and hiker extraordinaire. He contributed the desert hikes and just did a beautiful job. If you've never been to Amboy Crater and places in the Mojave. So, I view hiking as seasonally. So I'm kind of like around July, September, that, while I'm in my summer hiking mode, I'm thinking about, okay, where am I going to go in the desert this winter? What kind of permits do I need to get? Where do I need to, where do I need to start? We're also talking about camping, which of course goes hand in hand with hiking. You do not have to be a backpacker. Plenty of people car camp. And of course, when you car camp, you have more proximity to more trails, right? You could just do day hikes and have your base at your car camp. One of the things I always tell people is you really, really need to sign up early for a campground. Those of you who have been on recreation.gov or the California Parks, I can't remember the name of it right now, reservation system, it can just be nightmarish if you want to be impulsive and think, oh, it's 4th of July weekend, let me go find a campground. Things get booked up very, very early. There are different places to go. You can always look at private campgrounds. KOA comes to mind, others. When, those great public campgrounds are crowded. There are wonderful first come, first serve campgrounds in our national forests that are nearby. Boy, you have to be there like on a Wednesday or a Thursday in hopes of getting a holiday weekend campsite. So car camping is a whole different thing, right? Because you don't have to carry stuff, but you do have to be well prepared. I was just talking with Tiffany, one of the librarians who was up in the Eastern Sierra hiking, who got snowed on and had to descend in snow. And, that California is the landscape that doesn't disappoint. It is so dramatic. You can be out on a very hot day hiking in the Eastern Sierra, be at elevation, and you can encounter snow. So when it comes to car camping, you kind of have to be prepared for everything. And that means, having a lot of layers, having, a good tent, having the sleeping bag, all the stuff you need. I know that right now it is so popular, #van life, where people have converted vans into like their dream camping mobile. I'm kind of a tent person, so I haven't done that, but it's a really interesting community. And a lot of people not only converted their vans and went camping, but did that during the whole pandemic because they knew that they could work remotely, and they figured out how to make it happen. And man, I wouldn't have minded writing my stories from a campground than hunkered down in my home. So I thought that was kind of cool. So yeah, camping, start early. There are wonderful campgrounds in the Angeles Forest, as well as San Bernardino Forest, which has recently reopened after they've had their fires last summer. I was saying earlier, I feel like at some point, all of Southern California's trails were off limits because of fire. And even if the trails were open, the air quality was so bad. So, I mean, that's a real environmental issue that I think we all need to think about. I mean, one of the things I love about hiking is also, and hiking for as long as I have, is that you think about ways to become a better steward of the earth, right? You think about ways because you want that hiking trail to be there. You want things to be intact. I will say, I remember reading about this in the wild. They had, along with the pandemic crowds in the Angeles forest, and not just that forest, but I'll pick on that one because I went out and looked. The garbage on the trails was more than they could possibly keep up with. And they have a policy called pack it out. And I wasn't sure, which is why I wrote the story, that everyone understood that that means anything you use in the forest, your sandwich wrapper, your soda can, anything, pack it out and take it home and discard it there, because there's not enough places to drop refuse in our national forests. And it's much more expensive to process that refuse. Anyway, I won't go into that big time, but it is something I would like people to think about. I am always aware of garbage, packing stuff out, particularly because I backpack, and you would never just leave stuff in the woods. And when we talk about packing stuff out, we're talking about packing out toilet paper and anything you use on the trail. So it's a big issue, but one that I think we all want to be good stewards. And I love that the name of the book you all are reading is Leave No Trace, because that is the philosophy that prevails now. You know, the saying is, take only photos, leave only footprints. And I take that pretty seriously. We want our public lands to be as we found them. You know, I don't want to leave a bunch of litter or you know, denigrate it in any way. What else about hiking? I think that's it. And I'm wondering if people have questions. Anybody? Christine?
Thank you so much, Mary. Fabulous program, wonderful information, lots and lots of information for us. So
Thank
if
you.
you have questions, please put them in chat and I will ask them. We have one question right away. Somebody wanted to know where you can get leave only footprints. If you go to the Pasadena Public Library, to the website under news and notices, to the June off the shelf, and click on it, then you go to page 4 and it tells you can sign up for the Adult Summer Reading Club and contact your local branch and see if they still have a copy available. We have limited copies. The copies are courtesy of the Friends of the Pasadena Public Library. So if the copies are all gone, everybody has picked them up, the free copies, you can still check them out from the library and you can get your own copy from Vroman's bookstore. So there's lots of questions. So now let's see. Let me go back. The first one is, okay, is Eaton Canyon now discontinuing requirements for reservations to enter and hike? Do you know?
That's a great question. Eaton Canyon became so popular during the pandemic. They limited access by having free permits. I believe they still have that in place, but I will check that out and write about it in the wild when I know more. But I was surprised to see that there was other access, I suppose you could go into Eaton Canyon, that the access at the Pinecrest gate to go up Henninger Flat was open because that gate had been locked for quite a while. So I believe the permit process is still in place.
Okay, somebody's asking something that's not related to your talk about, you know, tomorrow is June the 15th. When can we stop wearing masks inside of the libraries? You may come into the libraries tomorrow not wearing the mask if you prefer to do so. The next question is, what shoes do you wear?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad somebody brought up gear. You know, I have found over the years, gear is so personal, right? You go to a good gear store, an REI, a Dick's, somewhere where they have a good selection, and you really try a lot of things on. That's what I do. I still mourn the loss of Adventure 16, which was a fantastic store. They had couple of outlets, one in the Valley, one on the West Side, because they just had such good expertise. So my advice is you have to find the shoes that work for you. If you're starting out hiking and you're doing some of these like 5 or 6 mile hikes, that's the good thing about hiking, not a huge investment right off. You can get away with what we call trail runners or trail shoes, which are lighter weight. You know, you don't have to go out and buy $200 leather boots to go hiking. And there are such great lightweight boots. I confess, I absolutely love Hoka's. I use them for running and for hiking, but you know, what may fit on your feet, you know, and on my feet will be different. But, and I will say this, make sure your shoes are comfortable. I mean, there is no like, oh, I guess I just have to get through this and my feet are just going to kill me no matter what. I go on hikes and my feet feel great. I go on 18-mile hikes, 20-mile hikes, and you know, my feet are still good. I might be tired, but my feet can still go the distance. So I think the key is, you know, find your own way. Sometimes if you have a pronation or whatever, you may need orthotics. You may need to see an orthopedist. I know I had to eventually. And yeah, find the shoe that works for you and that's comfy.
Okay, so someone wanted to know the author of the guidebook that you recommended. And so we'll put that down. Do you remember? You talked about
Casey Schreiner, I believe. Oh, is it Schreiner? And he's well known. If you Google modern hiker, you will see it. Also, I mentioned A Foot and a Field in San Diego. It is a series of guides for Southern California. And that also is a very good guide source. And then I would Google 100 Trails of the Angeles. And that's kind of how I learned. John Robinson originally wrote that book. He has passed away, but he just gave us a great gift. I think even before we were making bucket lists or lists, John's guide was my hiking Bible. And that's how I learned all the area around Pasadena, around Altadena and the National Forest.
So we're going to continue with all these wonderful questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mary. So please disregard that. So where do people apply for permits for Mount Whitney?
That is the, technically Whitney is in the Inyo National Forest. It's about 4 hours north of LA, just right near the little town of Lone Pine, California. So you would go to the Inyo National Forest page.gov online and you will see an entire how to apply for Mount Whitney permits. It's not daunting, but you do have to follow it. Like I say, permits start in February. Those that aren't, it's a complicated lottery. Those that aren't awarded in the lottery, there's a second lottery. Sometimes you can get a day of permit, but you kind of have, or a day before permit, you kind of have to know what you're doing. But that page in your national forest, Mount Whitney, will tell you everything you need to know. It's a tough, tough trail, but it's awesome.
So have you encountered mountain lions or bears? If so, what do you do? And what do you recommend for hikers to carry for safety? Mace, pepper spray, bear spray, or what?
Such good questions. I have been hiking at least 4 decades at night, in daylight, daybreak, at, you know, all kinds of hours. I have never, ever, ever encountered a mountain lion. So your chances of encountering a mountain lion are very small. Okay, so that's number one. Bears, I absolutely have seen bears. And as you get into areas like Whitney and other areas of the Sierra, they require you to carry something called a bear canister. And it's a very heavy, they'll even rent you one if you don't want to buy one. It's a heavy canister and you put all your food in that and you put it in your pack because the bear can't open it. They want the bears to stay wild. I have seen bears at a distance. We all saw that video of that young woman. A bear came into her backyard and this teenager in Bradbury ran out and pushed the bear and grabbed her dogs and ran back in, you probably wouldn't want to do that. I talked to a wildlife biologist who said, no, don't do that. But bears don't want to go after humans. We are not a threat to them unless they are with their young, they feel defensive, something has happened. But generally, bears are not a problem. They are not coming after you to eat you. And surprisingly to me, they're not coming after you to eat whatever's in your pack. However, people do carry bear spray, and you can buy bear spray. I believe you can buy it over the counter. You really have to know how to use it. I personally don't carry it. I'm going hiking in Alaska at the end of this month, and I might consider it then. You really have to know how to use it, because once you release it, number one, you have to be at close range with the bear. So you would only use this if, a bear is really charging at you. Again, highly unusual situation. And number two, you have to think about the wind direction and the temperature, because if it's blowing toward you, you're the one who's going to get this noxious odor and be, while the bear is very close to you, you may be the one that's overcome. So if you are going to carry bear spray, know how to use it. But I think you would probably be fine. And again, if you see a bear in the wild at a distance, you want to make yourself big, wave your arms, make a lot of noise, that kind of thing. Bears will, they don't want to come at you. They will find another way to go. If you are extremely close to a bear for some reason, as this woman was in her backyard, the wildlife biologist I spoke with said that you speak very softly while you retreat slowly, so that you aren't any kind of a threat. And you do look at the bear, she said, so that the bear understands that you are very softly retreating. So that's what I know about what I'm trying to think of. Seeing the bison on Catalina, bison are very big. Their heads are enormous. And so I always gave them very wide berth. I think it's a minimum of, is it 150 feet or more? I never even, got that close, because, we think of them as, I want to see this, I want to get a picture, but really they're wild animals. They aren't somebody that, they aren't things that want their photos taken. So I think you just really need to be really careful. Other than that, you're going to see lizards, you're going to see rattlesnakes. And rattlesnakes, you have to really walk outside of their range and give them wide berth, right? Usually they are not coiled and rattling. Usually they're just stretched out on the trail, and you can walk way, 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 like 4 feet around them. So that's about what I know about.
That's a very detailed information. Thank you very, very much. So another question is, how do you take out toilet paper without it being unsanitary?
Well, I do this, just so you know, on Mount Whitney, because the trail is so overused and it is managed as a wilderness area, you are required to carry poop bags, and you are required to use those bags and put your waste in it. And if you're on that mountain for 3 days, you're carrying that waste out with you, and there are receptacles at the base. I am very careful. I keep a separate, like a Ziploc or bag in my ditty bag, and I keep that with me. And that is the bag that I put all my toilet paper in, or wipes, or anything that I'm using. And I put it in there, and nobody sees it. And it is just not okay to leave. And I know we've all seen it, ribbons of toilet paper on our most beautiful trails. That's just not good, not good. So I think you can be careful with how you handle the paper. And I just put it in my Ziploc bag, put it in my canvas bag that no one sees, and I take it out.
Okay, thank you very much. So is there a shoelace tying trick to prevent losing a toenail?
Oh, if you're
Because-
losing, if you're losing toenails, it's probably happening on the downhill. And that means your boots are either a little too tight or your socks are a little too thick. It's so funny you ask about shoelace tying, because I double bow, I double knot, but there are some Solomon boots that come pre-laced. And when you replace the laces, you kind of they have a tutorial on how to relace your Solomon boots. And it's not all that intuitive, but at any rate, I think you need to look at what's happening when you go downhill in your boot if you're getting discolored toenails, and your laces may be too tight. On the uphill, your foot is sliding toward the back, but on the downhill, once you get to the peak and you're now coming downhill, especially on those steep parts of Catalina, you want to retie your boots very tightly and use your sticks, if you're carrying walking sticks, to descend. So hope that helps.
Okay, any recommendations on hikes in Southern California where we can go when the temperature reaches 90 degrees if we want to go tomorrow, for instance?
Oh my God, I would say go to high elevation because it's like 10 degrees cooler. So especially if you're going midweek, I would go to Ice House Canyon, which you can find pretty easily. It's a good workout. You do about, I think it's 3.5 miles to what's called Ice House Saddle. And from there, you have some options. You can go to Timber Mountain, you can go to Ontario, but it's just lovely and it is cooler. And the higher you get up the canyon, when you start out, it's going to be hot. But what you want to be looking at in these really hot days is high elevation. Unfortunately, if you're a beginner, those are the harder hikes. Some people take the chairlift up to the Mount Baldy of the Notch. You can take the chair up to about, I think it's 8,600 feet, 9,000 feet, and then walk out to the peak. It's a strenuous hike, but maybe you just want to go a little ways up and get the value of those cooler temperatures. One of my very favorite places is to take the tram up from Palm Springs, and now it's like 20 degrees cooler, and there are lovely little trails that you can take that are pretty easy. So I kind of like the high elevation thing when it's hot down here.
Okay, so someone is planning to start a backpacking with their daughter that's 13 years old. We'd like to use Amtrak and somehow get to the trailhead by such as renting a car or Uber. Do you have any recommendations for the startup backpacker for the location?
Wow. Trailheads are hard to get to public transit. And I know there are groups working on that issue. Nothing comes to mind in terms of using a train. That's a hard one. I would also, if it's a first backpack and you've never done this before, I would go with a group or take a quick backpacking course. REI, I think, has courses that will train you, how to kind of know your way around the woods. That is a very good question. I can't think offhand of any trailheads where that would take you right to a trailhead. And the irony here is when the Red Line was, back in the days in LA, many of the trolleys went right to the trailheads, especially up Lake Avenue, that would take you right up to Echo Mountain. Unfortunately, we don't have those kind of connections anymore. So I'll have to do some research on that.
Okay, thank you very much. So any recommendations for local overnight trips for beginning backpackers, specifically for the hesitant significant others?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one because you don't want to do something so hard that they feel alienated. But yet you want to introduce them to this wonderful world of camping. If you're talking about car camping, there are just some great places between here and Big Bear. I'm thinking Heart Bar Campground. There's a couple of others. You'll find them. They have reservable sites as well as first come, first serve. So if you do a little bit of research, I would do like campgrounds, San Bernardino National Forest, campgrounds in northern San Diego County. So just keep it kind of low elevation, easy trails. You know, you set up your camp, easy trails to go out on, maybe something that has a little river that isn't that taxing, so that everybody can get used to what it feels like to camp and go hiking.
Okay, what about moderate hikes to the beach?
Oh, beach hikes are great. I would say Malibu is just about one of my favorite destinations. Now, I tend to like hikes where you're above the water and you get the fantastic views. I'm thinking of Termley Wilderness Park, which unfortunately burnt a bit in the the wildfire that came through a couple of years ago. However, it's a fantastic place for views. I can also think of Will Rogers State Park, which is a great place, again, to like hike to Inspiration Point and you'll get views of the water. However, there are great, I'm thinking Point Doom, also in Malibu, that takes you right to the beach. And there are some great Orange County ones. If you go into that hiking guide, latimes.com/hiking, you'll see there's a story my colleague Chris Reynolds did that has a bunch of beach hikes at Dana Point and some other places that are just beautiful and take you to the beach. Not that hard, or that you can add on and make them as hard as you want.
Okay, thank you very much. Someone's just said that they don't believe that reservations are no longer required for entry to Eaton Canyon natural area access to the Eaton Canyon Trail System. You can go to parks.lacounty.gov, Eaton Canyon, and find out more information.
And that is good news because, you know, I mean, I understand why we have permits, and permits help manage different areas, but you know, it would just be wonderful for our local trails. It would be great if in fact Eaton Canyon has dropped that requirement.
That would be wonderful, yes. So is there a list of trails that require a forest or adventure pass? Are there different types of passes? Sometimes I'll arrive and they'll tell me I have to have a pass and I don't have one.
Such a great question. Yes, all the national forests in this area, you would need what's called an adventure pass. I think it still costs $5 for a single. And if you get a pass for the year, I can't remember how much it is, but you do need to display that in your car. If you have an America the Beautiful pass, which gets you into all national parks, national forests, you can display that. And I'm really glad someone brought up the topic of permits, because the San Gorgonio Wilderness Area in San Bernardino, which is where San Gorgonio Peak is and some other beautiful spots, now requires permits for some of their trails. Cucamonga Peak is one of them, and the South Fork Trailhead. So there is, if you go to San Bernardino National Forest, they have a link. The permits are free, but you do have to have them in advance. They are monitoring how many people go into the wilderness. So you're going to need your adventure pass. You may need a permit depending on the trail you're going on. And that's what makes, you know, this is so great. The internet and the guides that I talked about and the apps, usually they will tell you when you need permits or what kinds of, you know, what kinds of passes or permits are required in the area, because you don't want to get there and then have to drive back into town to get a permit or anything like that.
So are there group night hikes in the area for different levels of hiking ability?
That is such a great question, because that is how I started. So Griffith Park, for years and years and years, the Sierra Club has led guided hikes in Griffith Park in the evenings, and they are spectacular. Most people like coming out in summer when it's light. I actually enjoy it when it's dark. Number one, they're great conditioning hikes. Number two, you're not going to get lost. Number three, you're going to meet like-minded people. And they're free. You can just show up at this place. It's called, if you Google merry-go-round parking lot on your Google Maps, it will pop up. They start at 7 p.m. Again, they're going to restart on July 5, and they have hikes at different levels. So, you know, if you're a newbie or you're a moderate hiker, you will find a level that works for you. And that was my gateway to hiking. I didn't know LA. I came here like 40 plus years ago, wound up in the park, and it's just wonderful. These volunteer leaders know all these trails that at night or even during the day are hard to find. And it's just a lot of fun, and you get to see LA all lighted up. It is just beautiful.
Oh, it must be just absolutely beautiful. And you've answered so many wonderful questions in chat, and we've actually come to the end of the questions. But I want to thank you very much, Mary, for all your fabulous detailed information for us. I want to remind everyone that you generously donated a whole nother session to the library on Wednesday, July the 14th at 5 o'clock. And thank you so much for all of the course. So it's fabulous. Your knowledge just absolutely overwhelming. So be sure and look for her different hikes and camping in the LA Times. There was one for Mother's Day, where to go for Mother's Day hikes. So you'll get used to finding all of these wonderful suggestions. So thank you so much, Mary. I'm going to give you a big round of applause, and I'm sure everybody will join me in giving you a round of applause. Thank you very much. So enjoy all of your hikes and camping before we see you in July.
Okay. See you then.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.